Sonic Frontiers is a game that released in late 2022 on November 7th. Following its release, the game has garnered a big following of supporters of the game's bold new direction for the Sonic franchise, whilst others have slowly turned on the game for its take on the franchise and ruined the fundamentals which worked in previous Boost-era titles. Why is that? Frontiers was never short of its critics and always had an upper battle from the beginning, since its grand gameplay unveiling at IGN in June 2022, which showed Sonic slowly walking around or running across an empty environment, which didn't even seem Sonic-like at all. For a lot of people, this was already a nail in the coffin with how bad Sonic Team's mainline track record has been. With each new trailer, more hype was brought to the table, with Sega clearly trying to fix the game's reputation, which for the most part worked, with skepticism changing to hype for most people as we inch closer to release. Then we had reviews and previews drop, which were mostly positive and happy with Sonic's bold new direction. The game ended up with a 70 on Metacritic, which was higher than any of the previous Sonic Team games from the last decade. This game was the first major title from the series with eyes on it from the new movie fans. After the game's release, a lot of people have asked if the game did succeed or fail with its new direction. Let's find out. With the story segment of this video, I'll keep it kind of short, but Sonic Frontiers is the first game where the IDW Sonic comic writer Ian Flynn had it going, and you can kind of tell the narrative shift and the voice direction change, especially coming from games like the Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces respectively. The gist of the story is you start the game with a cutscene of Sonic flying with Tails and Amy whilst getting sucked into a wormhole which would separate everyone, chucking them into cyberspace. Upon leaving cyberspace, Sonic encounters this odd voice telling him that he's the key and to tear down the wall between dimensions. And Sonic does as he's told and gets on his way. Game revolves around you saving your friends and breaking that wall down so the speaker entity can be freed. Nevertheless, the entity's motives will destroy humanity.
Mortal.
Ugh. Hello?
You have done the impossible. You have escaped cyberspace through your own power. You are the key.
Key, huh? Sure beats being called a rodent. Are you saying I can rescue my friends?
Find the Chaos Emeralds. Destroy the Titans. Tear down the walls between dimensions.
Yeah, okay, sure. How about a little context? Hello? Oh well. Some direction is better than none. Here we go.
Sonic Frontiers consists of open zone islands or mini open worlds for players to explore with arguably kinda basic environments such as grassy plains, deserts, and volcano islands, which kind of leads Sonic to look out of place. I'll touch upon that a bit later. Sonic Frontiers was held as a reinvention of the formula, which it sort of did accomplish whilst giving us more control over Boost Sonic oddly enough, especially when people thought that Sonic would control more like the adventure games when it came down to them developing an open world-esque game, but however that was not the case. A bunch of people, along with myself, wanted to go back to momentum-type physics like we had in the Sonic Adventure games, with fan games Sonic GT and Sonic Utopia showing us how that could have worked, but they didn't do that. So the question was asked, how does the boost feel in open zone? From what I played, I always thought that the controls in this game kind of felt like if Sonic Forces and Sonic Adventure had a child for the most part. It felt smooth and easy to control, with Sonic not feeling like a being with a mind of its own. However, the caveat of it feeling somewhat like Sonic Forces comes with a problem of it not having any momentum physics, which the devs sought out to negate with the physics tweaking sliders in the settings, which most people use to their advantage to make Sonic fly or stop at an instance no matter the circumstance. On reflection, this is kinda awful, it shouldn't have been in the game. It allowed for player expression, but I believe Sonic Team should have just created a moveset which fit the entire games by themselves, instead of giving us the tools to attempt to fix whatever they created. The open zone controls for the most part weren't an issue to most people because it felt generally good to control, which was a relief for me especially when I first played the game. However, one part of the game can feel good to play, but how did the other one feel? Well, in Frontiers, you get experience points, which could have been acquired from defeating simple enemies from home and attacking, sliding, or completing stuff around the map, like breaking experience capsules. With these points, you could begin to expand a new feature to the Sonic game called a skill tree. Truly revolutionary, am I right? In this skill tree, you had multiple combat finishers or movement abilities which could aid you in battle or exploration, but mostly for combat. Most of these moves will put you in animated cutscenes if I had to describe them. Whilst flashy, they didn't exactly bring much flair mechanically to the gameplay. However, it may seem rather shallow. I think it does a good job for not breaking the pace of battles and traversal. They're all moves which can be executed with a simple button combo or combination held together. Often these moves or finishes don't really last too long to break up the pace, which I actually do appreciate because at the end of the day, this is a platformer first with beat-em-up elements sprinkled in. With the platforming and combat sides covered, let's see how these two playstyles mesh together and interact with each other in the open zone. These gameplay mechanics mentioned earlier mesh into a well-executed gameplay loop of collecting Chaos Emeralds, from doing platforming challenges such as obstacle courses such as an Ares Island, or spiraling around a massive pyramid on rails, or home attacking on obstacles. It's where the usual platforming and chores of Sonic being a mix of forces and adventure gets to flex the muscles. However, new to this entry in this series, we've got puzzles to solve on the islands to reward us with memory tokens or strength or defense seeds. However, these challenges are quite frankly pathetic and easy to do that a 5-year-old could solve them, but they are only there if you really want to engage with them, so I won't go too hard on them. Then with those seeds which I mentioned earlier, we could go upgrade our stats such as speed or ring capacity, to name a few, via 2 creatures that I'll bring up a little bit later. Memory tokens also had a primary way of collecting them, being platforming, which let the skill set of Sonic flex even further. By flex further, I didn't mean far, being a lot of Sonic's moveset from older Boost games has been stripped when it comes to platforming. So with no drift or somersault, you'll be basically doing home and attack chains or basic rail grind challenges to get your rewards. Remember when I mentioned the strange creatures you take your seeds to? Those are the Hermit and Elder Cocos. These creatures expand your set abilities I mentioned earlier. However, upgrade seeds aren't the only thing that's needed to upgrade those stats, no. You need to collect these cute creatures across the islands on your journey called Coco. These little guys are scattered all around in every area imaginable, so you need to have a certain amount of these to be able to exchange for an upgrade to a certain level. But don't fret, because these creatures are extremely common and easy to find due to them being basically everywhere where you get your other collectibles from, which I kind of think is fine enough for a first attempt at an open zone-esque kind of game for the series. However, memory tokens, which I mentioned earlier, are used for a lot more than just, exchanging for upgrades. Once you can collect them, you may spot your friends of Amy, Knuckles, and Tails trapped in cages, which you can free them from and advance the story of the respective island you are on. And these tokens are also used to have in-game conversations with them to push forward the plot after grabbing an emerald. With these memory tokens, it incentivizes players to go exploring. You may end up thinking that you only collect stuff on these islands from what I've told you so far, but that's not really the case. However, defeating Guardians, which are massive enemies scattered across the Starfall Islands, rewards you with portal gears upon defeat. These mini-bosses vary greatly in quality, with most or not all of them having some unique gimmick when it comes to fighting them, which your enjoyment of fighting them may heavily depend on that self-imposed gimmick, but I digress. You may ask, what do you do with these portal gears when you have obtained them? Cyberspace. To unlock cyberspace levels, which were traditional boosting levels which fans should be used to, since they've been used from 2005 Sonic Rush up to 2017 Sonic Forces as a main gameplay of the Blue Blur, and return here but as a supplementary piece of game instead of being the main focus. And unfortunately this shows, but I'll touch upon the presentation and level design in a later segment. But it's clear to most people and by the reactions that this was hands down the weakest part of the game, which came as a surprise due to its poor controls, which were oddly different and had different physics. But nevertheless, you have to do cyberspace and its objectives, such as obtaining an S ranking or completing a level under the time limit given, which weren't particularly hard besides one level at launch which had people stumped, and the craziest part of that was that it was none other than the second level of the game, 1-2. You couldn't write that even if you wanted to. However, upon completing the levels as mentioned, you'd get rewarded with vault keys depending on how well you performed via completing the challenges. You may ask, how do these keys impact the gameplay loop? They allow you to open emerald vaults to get the chaos emeralds, so with that, the gameplay loop of the islands quickly gets figured out. And in my full honest opinion, I never got bored of it. I found it refreshing and fun to do every single time. With 6 of the 7 chaos emeralds collected from doing the gameplay loop, where do you get taken to next? That leads you to having a conversation with the corresponding character on the island to trigger an event where you have to do one more big puzzle to unlock the entryway up to the boss on the island. And if you're wondering where the 7th emerald is, this is where it all resides. To even begin the fight against the final boss of the island you are on, you need to proceed to climb the boss to reach its head to gain access to this last 7th emerald to turn supersonic and stand a chance. Whilst you do, the hypest music in Sonic Boss history starts blasting. It's immensely gratifying into this moment and had my jaw on the floor. I didn't expect the game to throw something like this at the player at such an early stage. It was a great way to subdue the expectations and trash 2017 Sonic Forces in about the same runtime as the whole entire game. The bosses in Sonic Frontiers are just, you had to be there moment if I have ever experienced one in gaming. Truly hype aura moments. However, as cool as these fights are, you do realize that they're kind of shallow mechanically like the rest of the game and combat wise. But I still think the inclusion makes the game significantly better. Every boss had a different gimmick where I didn't feel like it was a chore. They were all dumb fun fights which felt extremely rewarding after all you did to get to that point. I'll touch on the music as a whole in a great aspect later, but Kelly Quinn from the band Sleeping with Sirens steps in here to do rock metal songs for these fights, and they're simply incredible at pumping up the player to go and beat the boss. And these songs are easily able to stand alongside the great songs of Crush 40 of the past like Live and Learn and All I Made Of. For a 2022 game, I can't help but think this is kind of ugly looking as a game. The islands visually look good, I can't complain there. The issue in Sonic's model here, it's drop dead awful. He looks lifeless and terribly animated in cutscenes. I know this game had to be drastically downgraded in scale and graphics to accommodate the Switch. However, I still think this level popping on a $60 game at launch is utterly laughable, simply put. How do rails and hoops appear right out of thin air in front of me? Did anyone playtest this? This game commits the worst sin of being unoriginal and ugly in a lot of aspects, like come on, add a little bit of creativity, lads. The reuse of Green Hell, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary was evident cost cutting due to them having easy assets to grab from 2011 Sonic Generations. Also, having the whole game about revisiting Sonic's past memories via cyberspace, this game was utterly lazy with how it only included 3 environments, being the ones I mentioned and one brand new one. Easy is the first thing I'll call cyberspace levels. The sheer amount of carelessness put into these is scandalous in my opinion. How do you copy aesthetics but whole level designs from previous Sonic games such as Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Unleashed, it's downright unacceptable, no matter if they were rushed or didn't have budget. Like, look at these. Cyberspace overall shouldn't have really existed, and if it didn't, I'd say the game would have been better off for it, because you didn't have to deal with boring, uninspired level design or straight rips from games which are great and feel awful to play here due to the botched boost controls in cyberspace. Like, look at these. Also, wonky physics aren't exclusive to cyberspace, especially apparent when running across rocks or stones. It's not smooth at all, but it's not game breaking. But when you can fling yourself off the smallest pebbles into space by running across in the open zone, that's not exactly ideal when doing action chain challenges or fighting guardians like Asura. However, these are more funny than genuine frustrations. The game seems quite aware that cyberspace sucks major balls when there's a whole side minigame with Big the Cat fishing, which lets you bypass cyberspace if you please and gain vault keys that way. Genuinely baffling game design. There's one aspect of this game's presentation-wise which doesn't disappoint, and saying this is like, no matter how bad the Sonic game is, the music is always great. By no means Frontiers is a bad game, but the music is top class, as usual. The game ended up getting 1 year of additional life support with new content, new DLC, and a whole new campaign. However, it didn't really change my opinion of the game, so I won't really be talking about it in this video. In my mind, in the last 3 years, the game hasn't really changed in rating. In my opinion, it was still a 7 out of 10 game out on launch, and still is. Most importantly is that this game got well received, people liked it, and we're in a new era of Sonic games being actually good, so we can thank it for that.